The night the triplets were born was cold and loud, filled with the sharp smell of medicine and the constant beeping of machines. Outside the hospital, rain hit the broken streetlights. And inside a small delivery room, a woman lay shaking on a narrow bed. Her body was tired beyond words, but her heart was wide awake. She had been in labor for many hours, alone, holding onto the side rails as pain came and went like crashing waves. She had never imagined this life for herself. Just a few years earlier, she had dreams like anyone else. A small home, a simple job, a family that ate dinner together. But life had slowly taken those dreams away. First, her husband left when he learned she was pregnant. Then the landlord warned her about unpaid rent. After that, the job she depended on closed without notice. By the time her belly grew heavy, she had nothing left except fear and hope tangled together. When the first baby cried, tears ran down her face. It was a thin cry, weak, but alive. Then came the second, and then the third. 3 small lives placed briefly on her chest, each wrapped in thin cloth. The nurse said they were early and needed special care. The woman nodded, barely able to speak. She counted their fingers, touched their tiny faces, and whispered soft words she hoped they could feel. Not long after, the babies were taken away to machines she did not understand. She lay back, staring at the ceiling, feeling both empty and full at the same time. A doctor later explained the cost of their care, the medicines, the long days they would need to survive. The numbers sounded unreal, like a foreign language. She did not interrupt. She already knew she had no way to pay. The next morning, she woke up to silence. No babies beside her. No family waiting with flowers. Just a plastic cup of water and a thin blanket. She tried to stand, but felt dizzy. Her body was weak, but her thoughts were louder than ever. How would she feed 3 children? Where would they sleep? How long before she and her babies were forced onto the street? Over the next few days, she walked slowly to the newborn unit whenever she was allowed. She pressed her fingers against the glass, watching the babies breathe. Each one looked different. One always moved their hands. One slept quietly. One frowned, as if already unhappy with the world. She memorized every detail, afraid she might lose them even in her memory. She was polite to the nurses, always thanking them, even when they rushed past. She did not complain. She did not ask for help. Inside, however, her heart was breaking again and again. She cried silently at night so no one would hear her. She felt ashamed of her situation, as if poverty were a crime she had committed. One afternoon, a hospital worker came to her bed and asked her to wait. Someone wanted to speak with her. The woman assumed it was about bills or paperwork. She followed slowly into a quiet office. Inside sat a man she had never seen before. He was well-dressed, calm, and older. His voice was steady when he spoke. He said he was connected to a private foundation that helped children in need. He explained that he had been informed about her situation and her babies. He spoke about medical care, education, and a safe future. The words sounded kind, but distant, like they belonged to another world. The woman listened without interrupting. She did not trust easily. Life had taught her that offers often came with heavy costs. When he paused, she asked one simple question. What did he want in return? The man did not answer right away. He leaned back and looked at his hands. Then he said that he was willing to take responsibility for the children. Fully, they would grow up with everything they needed. They would never struggle the way she had. But there was one condition. She could not be part of their lives. Not now, not later. The room felt smaller. The air felt heavy. The woman felt as if the floor had dropped beneath her. She asked if this was adoption. The man said it would be legal and private. The children would carry his name. Their past would be sealed. She stood up suddenly, her legs shaking. She said she would never give away her children. The man nodded calmly, as if he expected that answer. He told her to think about it. He did not pressure her further. He simply said time was important, especially for premature babies. That night, she did not sleep. She stared at the wall and listened to the sounds of the hospital. Every sound reminded her that she was surrounded by help she could not afford. She imagined her babies growing weaker because she could not provide. She imagined them hungry, cold, and sick if she took them back to her empty room. The next day, she went back to the nursery and placed her hand on the glass. She whispered apologies through tears. She told them she loved them more than her own life. She told them she was trying to be strong, even if it meant being alone. Memories from her own childhood returned. She remembered nights without food, her mother crying quietly, the feeling of being unwanted by the world. She had promised herself her children would never feel that way. Now, that promise was tearing her apart. The man returned 2 days later. He did not bring documents. He did not bring money. He only asked if she had thought about his offer. She asked him if he would love them. He said he would give them a life of security and opportunity. He did not say love, and she noticed that. She asked if she could see them one last time if she agreed. He said yes. The nurse brought the babies to her room, one by one. She held them carefully, feeling their warmth, their tiny breaths. She tried to remember the weight of them in her arms. Her tears fell onto their blankets. She whispered their names, names she had chosen in her heart but had never written down. She kissed their foreheads and told them she was sorry for the world they were born into. When the nurse took them away, the woman felt something inside her break quietly. Not loudly, not suddenly, but like a slow tear that could never fully heal. She sat on the bed for a long time, holding her empty arms. That evening, she signed the first paper with shaking hands. Her signature looked strange, as if written by someone else. The man watched silently. He placed an envelope on the table, but she pushed it away. She told him she did not want to see it. She wanted to believe this was about saving her children, not selling them. As night fell, she packed her small bag. She had nowhere to go, but she knew she could not stay. The hospital halls felt too quiet now. Every step away from the nursery felt heavier than the last. Before leaving, she stopped once more outside the glass window. The babies were sleeping. She pressed her forehead against the cold surface and closed her eyes. She promised herself she would survive, no matter how broken she felt. She promised she would carry their love inside her forever. When she finally walked out of the hospital, the rain had stopped. The streets were empty. She took one deep breath and kept walking, carrying a secret that would shape her life for years to come. The days after she left the hospital felt unreal, like she was walking through a life that did not belong to her anymore. The city moved as it always had. People went to work, buses stopped and started, shops opened and closed. But for her, time felt frozen. Every step she took felt heavy, as if her body was still tied to the place she had walked away from. She stayed wherever she could. Some nights on a worn mattress in a shared room, other nights on a chair in a quiet corner of a building where no one asked questions. She did not complain. She told herself pain was the price she had to pay. What mattered was that her children were alive, warm, and cared for. At night, sleep rarely came. When it did, it was broken by dreams of tiny cries and empty rooms. She often woke up reaching for babies that were not there. In those moments, the truth hit her again, sharp and sudden. Her arms were empty, and no amount of thinking could change that. The envelope the man had given her stayed unopened for days. It sat at the bottom of her bag, like something dangerous. When she finally opened it, she counted the money slowly. It was more than she had ever seen in her life, but it did not bring relief. It brought shame. She reminded herself again and again that she had not done this for comfort. She had done it because love sometimes demanded unbearable choices. She used the money carefully. First, she found a small room to rent. The walls were thin, the floor cold, but it was a place where she could close the door and cry without being seen. She bought simple food, nothing extra. She avoided mirrors because she did not recognize the woman staring back at her. Weeks passed. Her body healed slowly, but her heart did not. Every sound of a baby crying on the street made her stop walking. Every stroller felt like a reminder. She began to work cleaning offices at night. The quiet helped. The work was hard, but it kept her hands busy and her thoughts under control. Sometimes she imagined her children's lives. She pictured them in clean rooms, wearing soft clothes, sleeping without hunger. She wondered if they cried, if someone picked them up when they did. She hoped they were held often. That hope became the only thing that allowed her to breathe, far away from her small room. The triplets were settling into a world she could barely imagine. The house they were taken to was large and silent, filled with long hallways and soft carpets. Nurses and caregivers moved carefully, following strict rules. The man made sure nothing was missing. Money solved every visible problem. The babies received the best medical care. Specialists watched over them. Their strength slowly grew. Their tiny bodies gained weight. On paper, everything was perfect. But the house lacked something no one spoke about. It lacked warmth. There were many hands, but none that stayed long enough to feel familiar. The man visited them often, watching quietly from a distance. He believed he was doing the right thing. He believed structure and opportunity were enough. He did not question whether love could be planned the same way as success. As months turned into a year, Mother marked time in silence. She counted birthdays that no one else knew about. On that day, she always took time off work. She sat alone, holding 3 small candles she never lit. She whispered words meant only for them. She never tried to contact the man. She kept her promise. Some days she hated herself for being so obedient. Other days she was grateful she had not broken the rules. Afraid of losing even the small piece she had left, her health suffered. She grew thinner. People at work noticed she rarely spoke. But she was reliable, and that kept her employed. She sent no letters. She kept no photos. Everything she carried was inside her. Years passed quietly without warning. The world changed around her. Technology moved forward. Buildings rose and fell. She aged faster than her years, carrying a weight that never lifted. Meanwhile, the children grew into curious, intelligent youngsters. They had tutors, lessons, and every opportunity. They were taught discipline early. They were told their past did not matter, only their future. Questions about their mother were answered with silence or short, unclear words. As they grew older, each child reacted differently to that silence. One accepted it without resistance. One pushed harder, asking questions that made the adults uncomfortable. One stayed quiet, observing everything. The man noticed these differences but dismissed them. He believed time would smooth everything out. He believed his way was enough. He did not realize that unanswered questions grow louder with age. One afternoon, many years later, the mother saw a familiar face on a screen in a shop window. A news story about a business event. The man stood there, older now, speaking confidently. For a brief second, a young face appeared beside him. Her heart stopped. She knew without doubt. She stepped back, shaking. The world felt unstable. Her children were real people now, not just memories. They had voices, expressions, lives. She realized then that hiding forever would not erase the past. That night, she cried harder than she had in years. Not only from pain, but from fear. Fear that the truth would come out without her. Fear that they would hear lies before they hurt her heart. She considered writing a letter, but tore every attempt apart. Words felt too small. How could she explain a choice that still broke her every day? How could she ask for understanding when she herself still struggled to forgive her own decision? The next morning, she went to work as usual. She cleaned floors and emptied bins, pretending the world had not shifted. But something inside her had changed. The past was no longer quiet. It was moving, slowly but surely, toward the surface, far away. One of the triplets found an old document while searching for school records. It was incomplete, but enough to raise questions. Dates did not match. Names were missing. A small doubt settled in their mind. That doubt did not fade. It grew stronger with each unanswered question. It followed them into sleep and into waking hours. The truth, buried for years, had begun to breathe again, and somewhere in a small rented room, a mother felt it too. Like a distant storm she knew was coming but could not stop. Years passed, and the triplets grew up in a world of comfort that the mother had only dreamed of from afar. Their house was large and quiet, filled with rooms they could explore but never fully feel at home in. Tutors arrived every morning to teach them reading, math, music, and manners. They had clothes that fit perfectly, and food that was always warm and abundant. On the outside, their lives looked perfect. But perfection often hides small cracks, cracks that grew slowly, unseen by anyone except the children themselves. The eldest child was curious. They asked questions constantly about everything. Why did they not know their mother? Why were some things missing from their past? The middle child was quiet but sharp, watching the world carefully, noticing emotions in others even when they were hidden. The youngest was sensitive, afraid of loud noises, and found comfort in routines. Each of them carried a different piece of the truth in their hearts. Even without knowing it, the man who had taken them in tried his best. He provided money, opportunity, and safety. But love, the kind that is felt in arms and warm words, could not be bought. He did not understand this fully. He believed that giving them everything else would make up for what they lacked. He did not see the longing in their eyes when they asked questions about a woman who was supposed to be their mother. Meanwhile, the mother lived quietly, always thinking about them. She counted birthdays alone and marked special days in her mind, imagining what her children were doing. She walked through the streets, sometimes passing children playing with their parents, and felt a sharp ache in her chest. She could not stop the tears from falling when she saw laughter that should have been hers to share. She did not contact them, but she followed their lives quietly. Occasionally, she saw news stories or photographs that hinted at their growth. She memorized every detail, every small change. Each sighting was both joy and pain. She was proud of who they were becoming, yet she was painfully aware of the distance she had created. The children began school in a prestigious academy. They excelled quickly, not only because of tutors, but also because of a drive they could not explain. Deep inside, a part of them searched for something they had never had. Teachers and classmates noticed their intelligence, curiosity and discipline, but also a certain melancholy, a quiet questioning that they could not put into words. One day, the eldest child found a small stack of documents tucked away in a drawer in the study. They were incomplete, old, and confusing. Some papers had names crossed out, dates that did not match, and signatures that made no sense. The child's curiosity flared. They could not understand everything, but they sensed that something in their life was missing, something important. At home, questions began to rise. They asked the man about their early days, but he avoided the topic, claiming there were no records. They pressed gently, but were met with firm answers that were meant to end the conversation. Silence grew heavy in the house, pressing on the children. They felt a longing they could not describe, a hunger for understanding. Meanwhile, the mother grew older and wiser. She had endured years of quiet suffering, but she had also learned strength and resilience. She worked hard, saved small amounts of money, and lived frugally. Her mind never rested. She remembered every detail about her children's early days, every sound, every cry, every breath she had held. She could still see them in her mind, tiny and fragile, and her heart ached with love and regret. One evening, she saw something on the street, a small group of children laughing together. One of them looked familiar in a way that startled her. She stopped walking, her breath catching. She stared for a long moment, unsure if it was real. Her mind raced, filling in impossible connections, hoping against hope that she had not been mistaken. Then she blinked, and the moment passed. She could not chase them. She could only walk away, tears spilling down her cheeks. The children continued growing, their questions quietly building inside them. The eldest could not stop thinking about the documents they had found. They began searching for clues in every place they could think of. The middle child watched, noticing the restlessness in their siblings' eyes. The youngest followed quietly, sensing the tension, but not knowing why. School projects, exams, and tutors filled their days, but the search for truth was constant. They talked among themselves in whispers, piecing together fragments, noticing patterns, questioning what they had been told. A small seed of understanding began to grow, a sense that life was more complex than the orderly world around them. At the same time, the mother felt a presence in her life, a quiet awareness that her children were approaching a point where they might discover the truth. She feared it, yet she knew it was inevitable. Every choice she had made had led to this moment. She wondered if they would ever understand why she had made the decisions that separated them. The man who had taken them in began to notice changes too. The eldest child was asking more questions, challenging some of the rules he had set. He felt unease, sensing that control was slipping. He did not understand what was happening. He believed he had provided everything they needed, yet he could see that something important was missing. Meanwhile, the mother walked through her small, quiet life, imagining conversations she could never have. She thought about how she would explain herself if given the chance. She considered writing letters, but she destroyed each one, unsure if the words could ever capture the weight of her choice. She carried their love silently, hidden deep inside her heart, hoping one day they might understand. The children continued searching. They found old photographs, hidden notes, and clues that did not match the story they had been told. Each discovery added fuel to their curiosity. They started talking in hushed tones, wondering about the woman who had given them life, but had disappeared. Questions became louder, and the need to understand became urgent. The mother, living in her small room, felt the wind of change approaching. She sensed that her children were growing closer to the truth. The years of quiet suffering, patience, and love were coming to a moment of reckoning. She did not know how it would unfold, whether there would be anger, rejection, or understanding. All she knew was that the truth could not remain hidden forever. One night, she sat by a small window staring at the stars. She whispered their names into the darkness, imagining that somehow they could hear her. She asked for their forgiveness in advance, knowing that some wounds might never fully heal. She promised herself that when the time came, she would speak only with honesty and love. Far away. The children went to bed that night with questions lingering in their minds. The eldest held the documents close, wondering what secrets they held. The middle child closed their eyes, feeling a strange mix of anticipation and fear. The youngest dreamed of warmth and comfort, of a love they could not yet name but felt was missing. And somewhere between two worlds, the mother in her quiet room and the children in their grand house, the invisible threads of fate began to pull tighter. The past, long buried, was stirring, and soon the truth that had been hidden for years would emerge. The day the truth began to surface started quietly, without fanfare, in the most ordinary way. One of the triplets had been going through the study, curious and restless, searching for anything that might explain the lingering questions in their mind. They found a folder hidden behind some books, filled with old papers, documents, and photographs. Each page carried small clues, mismatched dates, and signatures that made no sense. They stared at them in disbelief, trying to piece together what had happened before they could remember. They went to their siblings quietly, showing the papers. The middle child leaned over, scanning quickly, noticing familiar patterns in handwriting and marks that looked strangely significant. The youngest stayed silent, feeling a mix of fear and curiosity, not yet ready to confront the changes these discoveries might bring. Together, they began to understand that someone important had been missing from their lives for a reason they did not yet know. Questions poured out. The eldest child asked the man who had raised them for explanations. At first, he tried to answer vaguely, offering reassurances about their safety and comfort. But the children were persistent, and his usual calm demeanor faltered. He realized he could no longer hide the truth without breaking their trust completely. He called them together. One afternoon, in the quiet of the library, his voice was low and measured, but his eyes betrayed unease. He explained that the children had been adopted under unusual circumstances. Their mother, he said, had made a choice that she believed would give them a better life. The children listened in stunned silence, unable to fully grasp the meaning of the words. Their mother had made a choice. That she was alive? The news hit them like a storm. Anger, confusion, disbelief, and a deep longing all came at once. They had been told for years that their mother had abandoned them. Now they understood that she had sacrificed herself for their survival. The room felt heavy with emotion, a mixture of relief and heartbreak. Meanwhile, the mother lived unaware that the truth was slowly reaching them. She continued her simple routine, unaware that her children were asking questions about her existence. She had walked through years of pain, thinking the connection between them had been severed forever. She did not know that the invisible threads had begun pulling them back together. When the children finally sought to find her, they were nervous and unsure. The eldest made the call first, using information they had gathered from the papers and some discreet inquiries. The phone rang once, twice, and then a trembling voice answered. It was the mother. She recognized the voice immediately, though years had passed. Her heart raced with hope and fear simultaneously. The conversation was quiet, tentative. The children introduced themselves, explaining carefully why they were calling. The mother listened without interruption, tears streaming down her face. Every word confirmed the love she had carried silently for years. She heard the longing in their voices, the mixture of anger and hope. And she knew that nothing she had done could ever undo the years of separation. But she also knew that love could still begin to heal. The first meeting was arranged in a neutral place, a small park with benches and quiet paths. The mother arrived early, her hands shaking, her heart pounding. She had prepared herself for rejection, for anger, for the possibility that her children might never want to see her again. She carried only the weight of truth and love in her heart. When the children arrived, their steps were slow and uncertain. The eldest recognized her immediately, though time had changed her appearance. The middle child kept their eyes careful, observing every detail. The youngest hid behind the others, unsure how to respond to the woman who had given them life, but not lived it with them. There was a long silence at first. Words felt inadequate to capture years of separation, years of unspoken love, and years of unanswered questions. Finally, the mother spoke, her voice trembling but steady. She explained everything honestly and simply. She told them about the poverty, the fear, choice she had made to give them a life she could not provide herself. She did not ask for forgiveness. She did not demand acceptance. She only shared her truth, hoping that it might offer understanding. The children listened, their emotions a whirlwind. Anger mixed with relief, sorrow mingled with curiosity, and hope flickered in their hearts. The eldest child reached out tentatively, placing a hand over hers. The middle child followed, their eyes softening. The youngest hesitated, then slowly stepped forward, feeling the warmth she had carried in her heart all these years. For the first time, all three felt a sense of connection, fragile but real. Forming slowly in the quiet park, the man who had raised them watched from a distance, understanding finally that love was more than safety, discipline, and wealth. He saw that true love required presence, honesty, and sometimes sacrifice that money could never replace. He felt relief and humility, realizing that he had done his best, but that the bond of family was something that had always needed to be nurtured in a different way. Over the next few days, the mother and children spent time together, cautiously. They walked in quiet parks, shared meals, and talked about small memories and questions. The mother did not overwhelm them with stories, but she shared enough to let them know that her love had never wavered. The children listened, slowly piecing together the gaps in their past. Finding both sorrow and beauty in the sacrifices she had made, emotions ran deep. Tears were shed for lost years, for misunderstandings, for the pain they had all endured separately. But slowly, bonds began to form. The children began to understand that her choices had come from love, not neglect. The mother began to see that her children were resilient, kind, and strong, shaped not only by wealth, but also by an invisible thread of love that had guided them through the years. The conversations were not easy. Questions about why she had left, why she had not contacted them sooner, and how she had survived alone were asked and answered with honesty. There were moments of tension, but also moments of laughter. Old instincts of care and affection returned naturally. The mother never tried to replace the years they had lost. She did not attempt to erase the past. Instead, she focused on building a future together, one day at a time. The children responded in kind, recognizing the depth of her love and the courage it had taken to make the painful choices she had made. The man who had raised them stepped back, allowing the family to find their own rhythm. He provided support when needed, but understood that this reunion was theirs alone. He witnessed the slow but steady growth of trust, the building of understanding, and the forming of bonds that had once seemed impossible as the days turned into weeks. The mother and children developed a routine. They shared small daily activities, like cooking simple meals together, going for walks, and talking about their dreams. Each interaction strengthened the bond, providing a sense of security that had been missing for years. Slowly, the children began to forgive not just their mother, but themselves for the feelings of confusion and anger they had carried. The truth had emerged. Bringing both pain and healing, it revealed the depth of sacrifice, the strength of love, and the resilience of human hearts. The mother's choice, once unthinkable, had allowed her children to survive and grow, and now, years later, it became a source of connection, understanding, and hope, though nothing could undo the years apart. A fragile and beautiful new beginning had formed. The family, once separated by circumstance and difficult choices, was slowly learning how to be together. Trust was growing, love was being rebuilt, and the wounds of the past began to heal, one quiet day at a time. The days that followed the reunion were filled with a mixture of cautious hope and careful discovery. The mother and her children spent long hours together, learning how to talk, how to laugh, and how to share a world that had been divided for so many years. Each interaction, no matter how small, carried meaning. A shared meal, a walk in the park, or simply sitting in silence together became moments of connection and understanding. The eldest child was eager to ask questions, wanting to know everything about the life their mother had lived, the struggles she had faced, and the choices she had made. They listened intently as she spoke of the long nights of loneliness, the fear of losing them, and the heavy decisions she had made out of love. The middle child observed, sometimes offering quiet comments or asking gentle questions, processing the story in a thoughtful way. The youngest child clung closely at first, wary of emotions too large to handle, but slowly began to find comfort in her presence. The mother never tried to rush them or force forgiveness. She did not ask them to understand everything at once. Instead, she shared her truth patiently, answering questions as they came and allowing them to react in their own ways. She spoke honestly about the guilt she carried, the pain of watching them grow from a distance, and the hope that someday they might see that her choices had been made out of love, not abandonment. Over time, the children began to see the depth of her sacrifice. They realized that the life they had lived in comfort and safety had been possible because she had made the hardest choice of her life. Anger and resentment softened, replaced by curiosity, empathy, and a growing desire to know her. They began to ask about small details from her life, about her favorite foods, the games she had played as a child, and the dreams she had once held. The mother responded with warmth, sharing stories that made them laugh and others that brought tears. Together, they discovered that, despite the years apart, there were connections that could not be erased. Habits, expressions, and little gestures revealed a bond that had always been present. Quietly guiding their lives, even when they had been separated, they started to create new traditions together. Simple things like cooking meals as a family, playing games in the garden, telling stories before bed, became rituals that strengthened their relationship. The children began to open up more, sharing their experiences, fears, and dreams. The mother listened with care, providing guidance, comfort, and the love she had held for them in secret for so long. The man who had raised the children stepped back, allowing the family to rebuild their own dynamic. He offered support when needed, but understood that the mother and children needed space to form their own bond. He watched quietly as they navigated the complexities of emotions. Witnessing the slow but steady growth of trust and affection between them, there were challenges, of course. Moments of doubt, frustration, and sorrow emerged as they confronted the years they had lost. The children sometimes struggled with the idea that their mother had not been there for them, while the mother battled guilt over the pain her absence had caused. Yet, through honesty, communication, and patience, these moments became opportunities for growth rather than division. the family began to explore the past together. They looked at old photographs, revisited places that held memories, and shared stories about the time they had spent apart. Each discovery brought them closer, helping them understand one another and the circumstances that had shaped their lives. They learned that love could be found even in difficult choices, and that forgiveness was a process that required time and understanding. As weeks turned into months, the children grew more comfortable with their mother. They laughed together, cried together, and celebrated milestones as a family. Birthdays, once lonely and unshared, were now occasions for joy and togetherness. Holidays were filled with warmth, the house echoing with the sounds of laughter and conversation. The mother felt a sense of fulfillment she had never known, while the children discovered a love they had longed for but had not fully realized. The eldest child began to document their journey, writing letters and keeping a journal to process emotions and memories. The middle child expressed feelings through drawing and painting, capturing moments that words could not fully convey. The youngest child found comfort in music, learning to play simple melodies that reflected the beauty of the family's growing connection. Through these creative outlets, they explored emotions that had been suppressed for years and found ways to express love and healing. The mother also took time to care for herself. She sought quiet moments for reflection, remembering the years of struggle and acknowledging the strength it had given her. She realized that her sacrifice, though painful, had allowed her children to thrive, and that knowledge gave her a sense of peace. She understood that while the past could not be changed, the future was theirs to shape together. As the family spent more time together, they began to plan for the future. They talked about dreams, ambitions, and goals, imagining a life where they could support and uplift one another. The mother encouraged them to pursue their passions, offering guidance and wisdom without control. The children, in turn, learned to trust her judgment and found comfort in her presence, understanding that she had always acted with their best interests at heart. The man who had raised them remained a quiet observer, occasionally offering advice or assistance, but he recognized that his role had changed. The mother and children had formed a bond that could not be replaced, and he accepted that his influence, though significant, was secondary to the connection that had been restored. In the evenings, the family often sat together in the living room, sharing stories, memories, and hopes for the future. The mother would tell tales of her own childhood. The children would recount school experiences, and together they laughed, cried, and reflected. These moments became the foundation for trust, understanding, and a love that was renewed through shared experiences. Time continued to heal the wounds of the past. The children's questions became less urgent, replaced by a sense of security and belonging. The mother's guilt softened, replaced by pride in their resilience and the knowledge that her choices, though difficult, had ultimately brought them together. The family discovered that love, patience, and honesty could overcome even the deepest separations. One day, the eldest child suggested a small family project. They wanted to create a memory book, collecting photographs, drawings, and stories from both the past and present. The middle child contributed illustrations while the youngest added music and sound recordings. The mother provided context, stories, and guidance, helping them piece together a narrative that honored their journey. Through this project, they celebrated their survival growth and the bond that had been restored. As the months passed, the family grew stronger. They faced challenges together, supported one another through difficult times, and celebrated victories, big and small. The mother's love became a constant presence, a source of comfort and guidance. The children learned to trust in her, to rely on her wisdom, and to embrace the depth of care she offered. The wounds of the past remained, but they were no longer barriers. They were reminders of resilience, sacrifice, and the power of love. The mother and children also began to reach out to the wider world. They shared their story with close friends, helping others understand the complexities of difficult choices and the importance of empathy, understanding, and forgiveness. They discovered that their journey could inspire others, knowing that even in the darkest circumstances, love and connection could prevail. Through all of this, the family never forgot the lessons of the past. They knew that life could be unpredictable, that choices could be painful, and that love often required sacrifice. But they also knew that honesty, patience, and understanding could heal wounds and create bonds that lasted a lifetime. Each day they learned more about one another, deepening their connection and strengthening the love that had been restored in time. The mother and her children found a rhythm that worked for them. They respected each other's boundaries, celebrated individual achievements, and nurtured the collective strength of the family. They discovered joy in everyday moments, from shared meals to quiet conversations, and found comfort in knowing that they were no longer alone. The man who had raised them observed from a distance, witnessing the family's growth and understanding that his role, though important, had been temporary. He felt relief, knowing that the bond between mother and children was strong, resilient, and unbreakable. He realized that wealth and opportunity could provide comfort, but love, honesty, and presence were the true foundations of a family. As the years went by, the family continued to build a life together. They supported one another, celebrated milestones, and faced challenges as a unit. The mother's choices, once unthinkable and painful, had led to a reunion filled with love, understanding, and hope. The children learned that even the hardest decisions could be made with love, and that forgiveness and trust could grow when nurtured with care, in the quiet moments. The mother often reflected on their journey. She remembered the long years of separation, the pain of sacrifice, and the uncertainty that had defined her life. She also remembered the joy of seeing her children grow, the laughter they shared, and the bond that had been restored. She realized that her heart, though once broken, had been mended through the love she had carried and the connection they had rebuilt. The family understood that life was not perfect, and that challenges would continue to arise. But they also knew that together, they could face anything. Love, honesty, and patience had brought them back together, and those qualities would sustain them in the years to come. Their story became a testament to resilience, sacrifice, and the enduring power of family. In the end, the mother and her children found peace. They had faced unimaginable